You saw the title of the video, and you're about to scream to ragebait, clickbait, or about to do your best just get good. And before that, just listen to what I have to say, that you're in a legitimate position to respond to my point. Yes, that's called being adult. Act like it if you want to be considered as it. Anyway, I quit ZZZ, and so you should. Here's why. Here's what I expected, what I got, what I dislike, and pushed me away further and further from this game. When I arrived on ZZZ, I was expecting an action game, where I could do pretty much what I wanted. Open world, more freedom, an upgraded version of Genshin, a gameplay with a lot of components that in a way were able to challenge me without necessarily having a difficult pick that was too high. Because I already try hard competitive games and try hard real life, I deserve rest and sweetness too. I expected maybe a little more depth of gameplay, and I had expectation. My expectations were that Genshin and Honkai failed to deliver. Let me explain. What I missed on Genshin was already depth of mechanic. The mechanics are very limited. There's normal attack, heavy attack, plunging attack, special skill, ultimate, a kind of dodge that gives me invisibility frame, then you switch characters and the loop is closed. On HSR, it remains turn-based game, so something quite basic, but the building part, I was expecting something more complex and I've been disappointing in the end. I expected on ZZZ that there would really be the action gameplay that I've been promised and that I've been sold. And I ended up with a version just a little more evolved of Genshin Impact without the open world. Certainly, there are a lot of mechanics, but we must not confuse difficulty and complexity. The problem is that ZZZ wanted to make it complex, and they made it difficult. I will give you a very simple example. You take games like Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Elden Ring, Sekiro, or any Souls-like game who have succeeded. In a certain way, they are a game with complexity. But understanding the mechanics is not difficult, and its application is a matter of practice. The problem I had as a beginner, and that I still have today even as an experienced player on ZZZ, is that they wanted to make it complex, but they made it difficult. Because not only are those mechanics not brought into the game in a good way, but in addition to that, each time we change teams or characters and we put forward archetypes, certain mechanics will fall into oblivion, or just not viable, not useful, others will be essential, but the implementation of all the common mechanics, all the common core of gameplay, is much too difficult to implement to have a result that rewards you for your efforts. And keep in mind this word. That's a key one, reward. It will come back a lot. Now, if we move on to something a little more advanced in terms of game design, it is as recurrent and important to realize. Hoyoverse games, their game design is always at the service of predation and never to enjoyment. It does not really make you want to stick to a game. I have often explained this on stream, but let's explain it once again. Archetypes. What is it in a video game? In game design, it's not necessarily the amount of damage you're going to inflict, it's the way you're going to inflict your damage, the main source. An archetype can be poison, magic, melee, it can be dot, could be a lot of things. In HSR, it can be something like super break, it can be dot, it can be direct damage, critical damage, etc. Or counter attack, follow-up attack, etc. There are a lot of ways, but what bothers me in a Hoyoverse environment, and what bothers me in ZZZ, is that it's the same problem as in HSR. It is that an archetype is introduced in the game, but its viability revolves around the fact you have all the characters to exploit it and make it work to a viable level. So there will be a main character who will benefit from the archetype or being its incarnation, and there will be one or two characters who are enabler of these mechanics. If you miss one, you're a bag of wet gunpowder. So, if you transpose that ID from ZZZ to HSR, to Genshin, to even Honkai Impact the Third, you will see exactly what I mean. And where is it predation? When you are free to play, it's not always accessible, sometimes impossible. But I'm also thinking about people who want to spend and who are often caught in the spiral of spending. When you have to spend between 250 to 450 per unit, you do the math. We have close to German or French minimum wage for one viable team. I remind you that there are countries where for 1.2k you can buy a decent car. I don't see why I would pay the price of a card to be able to play a team correctly in a gacha game. There is this part there, so what was my expectation at ZZZ is that the viability of the archetype is not so dependent on my composition, and that I am rewarded by my gameplay. But the gameplay, once again, is not rewarding. You can play as well as you want, it will not allow you to overcome the difficulties that the game arbitrarily imposes on you. And we come back to it again, the reward. I'm not rewarded for my effort, my ability to play the game correctly, or the skills that I have developed over time, like my reaction time, my ability to understand or apprehend patterns, or anything that requires the acquisition of a skill through experience obtained from a game to game or training. And we are going to talk about it often, I told you, the reward. In all video games, in all practice, any kind of practice, such as sports, playing music, playing an instrument, studying, the reward circuit is what makes you want to come back. Not only to come back, but also to invest and enjoy yourself when you produce something out of your effort. And in the case of Hoyoverse games, the reward circuit is not only extremely truncated, but also very abusive. The reward only comes from obtaining the characters, a gambling mechanic, which is completely random, but also from the ability to clear the endgame. But wait, clearing the endgame revolves only about having or not the good units. We're going to make a small parenthesis, going to discuss the part that bothers me the most, the power creep, because it's linked to that game design. So you know very well what it is. In ZZZ, power creep is just blatant. There is no half measure. We go from patch 1.4 with the release of MIB, where it completely destroys the game, to 3 patch later with the release of Vivian and later Yishuan, which makes the viability of the endgame dependent on having these characters or not in their best composition. And not only we're talking about viability, but in addition, 3 patches later, where these characters are supposed to be really meta-defining, where we are supposed to have units that have the most important mechanics, are in turn power crept that by characters in all very secondary in terms of popularity, in terms of story importance, in terms of design. On many aspects, those characters are completely anecdotal. Even their mechanics, they are more gimmicks than mechanics. And yet the power creep is there to tell you, hey, you will have to invest on this, buddy, in this gimmick, despite the fact that we have released completely OP characters because we decided, so here, shut up and pay. And I don't really agree with that, because if you ever want to invest in a MIB with W Engine, maybe with Dupe, well, we are on a SAM around 500. That's the same for Yishuan, so already just 2 DPS can cost you a minimum wage. I remind you of something, we are talking about a month minimum wage, so maybe there are some of you who earn 10k per month, and I'm very happy for you. But there are still people who want to play and relax on certain games. You ask them to work a full month to pay the characters who have a lifespan of 3 weeks. 1 month of work for 3 weeks of lifespan. I would like you to realize, there are people who get up at 6 in the morning, they have 1 or 2 hours of playtime before taking care of the rest of their life, and in this 1 hour of playtime, we'll ask them to spend what they got in this month? I'm sorry, ZZZ does not reward your financial effort, nor your gameplay effort, nor your optimization effort, because we will come back to it again, the reward. Character building, what I expected on ZZZ, and what did I get? I expected a game where leveling and building a unit was not a planning over a month, and in the end you have to spend between 2.4 to 3.6k energy to have the resource to build a character, and that is not normal. I do not have, in a game that wants to be casual, in a game that wants to be accessible, I do not have to plan a month in advance as if I was playing EVE Online, Black Desert Online, or Star Citizen with Excel spreadsheets. A game should not rule your life. Those who cannot realize this are completely disconnected. I tell you, it's really in the most benevolent way possible. I ask you guys to wake up, because planning 3 weeks to a month in advance the building of a character that we will play 15 minutes and that would end up in a trash in 3 weeks later, which costs a month's salary in most countries of the world, you realize the proportion it's taking. I give you an example. I will make comparison because we must compare. And there I will compare outside of Hoyoverse since the ecosystem is the same. Let's say you play WoWa. Worst case scenario, your pre-farm is done in 2 weeks. Even if you pull all units, when they release, they are ready day 1, playing 5 minutes a day. And for spenders, you can have everything for peanuts. Why? Because you do not necessarily need dupes, the weapon is a plus, but it is optional, and if you have cleared your endgame, that you have been investing in its mechanics and exploration, that you have taken maybe a small pass, etc., you won't need that much. And this money, this time, and this investment that you made to be good at the game, to be able to clear the endgame with teams that are not necessarily the most optimal, that will be rewarded in a certain way, and we come back once again to the reward. Yes, the circle of reward is something essential in a video game. It is what makes us want to reconnect, it is what makes us want to play, that we want to work, to progress, to have a result, and to be proud of it. Or just to flex to someone. But that's still a motivation. It is the reward that motivates you to get up in the morning, to either go to school, study for your exam, or go to work, the reward of what happens after, the outcome of all that effort. We call it the social contract. Except that in most Western countries and in the Hoyoverse ecosystem, this social contract is broken, null, void. And that's where we have a problem. Now, what happens when we expect an action game, but we have a game that we have a story like Doki Doki Literature Club, an action phase worthy of Jack and Dexter or Crash Bandicoot in the best day of PlayStation 1 in big 2025? What happens when we expect accessibility X, Y, or Z that we are promised, complex gameplay but which is more difficult than complex and not very applicable as a general rule? What happens when you have a game that promises you diversity of mechanics, of archetypes, but their viability is based on an investment of more than a month's salary in most countries in the world? It happens that there are people who are disconnected from these realities and keep defending a billion-dollar company, keep playing, spend, and praise that way, and there are others who decide to say no and stop feeding this man. Now, let's be clear. You probably are young, you don't necessarily have a lot of money, but you have a lot of time, and I'm sorry, you are not rewarded for your loyalty or the time you invest on that game. The game will never give you enough resources to be able to get there without putting money. Some of you will pull the pokey argument, but no, stop. It's a Hoyoverse game. You can be free to play at the beginning of the game, when you will be showered of rewards. But once you don't have enough to keep up the pace, the greedy and stupid argument is valid? No. On a fairly short timeline, yes, but as soon as we increase the time scale, this argument falls apart in fact. Because the more we stretch over time in a Hoyoverse game, the more the Hoyo game becomes predatory, the more the power creep is blatant, and the more you will find yourself in a situation to either plan 6 months in advance to be able to clear the endgame again, or you hit up the credit card. There is a problem. Let me tell you something. When you have a video game that is sold 20 to 60 euros, okay, it's 20 to 60. We will judge on graphic quality, quality of gameplay, quality of the story, its lifespan, and replayability. Hoyo? There, you will pay between 250 to 550 for something that you will use 15 minutes every 3 weeks, and who will go in the trash in 3 weeks. That's the first thing. The second, you have to realize that if you think that planning 6 months in advance for 15 minutes of pleasure every 3 weeks is normal, I invite you to question your notion of normality. It is not normal. The circle of reward does not reside in those things. It is not because you are used to being abused that it is normal to be abused. I invite you to reflect on this. Respect your time, respect your money, respect yourself, otherwise, who will? Peace.